So I'm looking at a piece of Arches watercolor paper, 140 pound. I've laid an ink wash in kind of mid-tone, and I'm going to take a look at what does the media do on the ink wash? What does it look like? So here's my colored pencil and my Conte pencil, which is much more white. Hopefully you can pick that up. I've got a pastel pencil here as well. Let's look at that one. Somewhere in between them, right? So this is brightest, a little bit dimmer, much dimmer. Can throw my white gel pen on it and see how much that shows up. Right, so it's good to do these tests because this is very absorbent, and the white gel pen's not able to sit on that surface of the watercolor paper very well. What I'm going to do next is try out the white gouache, which is again white opaque watercolor, and I'm literally just going to squeeze a little bit onto a porcelain plate. You don't need a lot. It works best when it is fresh out of the tube rather than when it's been set out and let dry, maybe if it's left on a pallet. I just put a little bit of water out, take a small brush, and I'm going to mix that up because it was a little stiff coming out. I need it to sort of moisten, but then you can see what happens there. All this that's more liquidy, that's going to be a gray tone. So there's a little bit of learning curve there too. How much do you need to be opaque? But you can also probably see here, let's say I spread this out with more water even going up, that it feels bluer. The media has a warm gray, and this adds some coolness to it. So it's something you got to be ready for. You got to know that that's going to happen. So let's see. Let's try this with gouache here first. That I have some water over here where I need it. Paper towels ready to go. And I want to think about what I'm doing. So I'm going to use the sphere idea again because I have no better ideas at the moment. Just an easy thing to play with the media. So I'm looking again at separating light from shadow. And building up towards that brighter tone. Now gouache will reactivate, so it's not permanent, and that means subsequent layers can lift off previous layers. I'm introducing a little water up there, move the more opaque white a little bit lower here. And when this is dry, I would come back in and hit that brightest point with a nice juicy stroke or mark, one that might even have a little texture to it, so that it has something that would catch the light. If you're ever thinking about some of those famous paintings you might see in a museum, they work with the lighting to help achieve the brightest highlights. So when you're looking at a painting, the tip of the nose where that ball is, where that highlight exists, it'll usually be this nice brush stroke that has dimension to it, which actually receive a highlight on it, which ends up making it look brighter. All right, so this then really separates the two sides. If I wanted to introduce the black into it, the one caveat is that it is a black that is a little warmer. We can see that here. So what I might end up doing is mixing the gouache with the black. So it has a gray. And so what that does is it ensures that the coolness is present here too, and it's not completely isolated. Now they make a black gouache, to be sure, but this is a good potential substitute. Starting with something of a mid-tone, something quiet. I didn't go in there with darkest dark. But once that's in there, yeah, I can bring this in. Let that bleed a little bit. Become that core shadow. Let this exist as that first wash as reflected light. And then come in and knock in the dark for a cast shadow. I've got it bleeding up into the damp wash, and I'll just pay attention to it before it goes too far. I can lift that out, but it should be fine while I finish out this shape. So I'll just take a damp brush and soften that spidering that happened there. Again, damp brush. It's got a little bit of white gouache in it even. Coming around this edge. And just soften it just a little bit. But I'm also going to throw some white out here, which will create a little gap with the cast shadow. So a little edge. Might add a little texture just for some relief, a little variation so it's not all flat and boring. And then as this is drying, again, just knock in a highlight up there. Once this is completely dry, if it's not doing everything you want, we obviously have colored pencil, graphite we can bring back in and introduce a little bit more interest to it.